If you're not comfortable with yourself, you won't be successful leading somebody else to the success. Let me make that more transparent. I have a habit of, with my department heads, if they're working on an initiative, and my boss is always receptive to this, is I'll say, hey, I'm going to put you in front of her. I want you to tell her or talk to her about this strategy because it's key for something she's working on. She conversely loves that because she's like, you know what? You're not intimidated by them. You're not trying to hide them. You're not trying to take their work. You're a good leader. You're putting them in front of me. It gives them an opportunity to elevate, to understand how do I communicate to somebody at the next level. So they appreciate that I'm taking something that I perceive as positive and valuable and saying, hey, I'm going to nurture you. It's so important and so valuable to what the company's doing. I'm going to put you in front of somebody. I don't need to take it and go and say, oh, look what, Bobby Joe did today. But no, here's Bobby Joe. That's their visibility. And I'm comfortable enough, again, confident in who I am, that I've set a strategy. This person has achieved something significant in the strategy. And guess what? Not only have I led them and helped shape what they're doing, but I can put them to the next level so that that next level gets exposure to it. And my boss loves that all day long. And so for a leader, as you mature, you've got to know that there's different levels of people. And so how do you listen to them to understand how to nurture them so that they respect you? I have team members who I consider specialists. They're my department heads. Some of them, I've done their roles before. Some I have not. And in any case, even if I have, I don't sit on top of them. Some worry about like, hey, the department head came from your area. I bet he gets on you all day long, but I don't. I stay out of their space and allow for them to be who they are, to create that imagination, to be bold, and then to meet those strategic goals. But if you sit on top of somebody in the old top-down structure of an organization, you're not allowing somebody to identify who they are. And if I have this philosophy of for my department heads to have imagination, I have about 5 or 6 of what I call DNA traits that when I'm recruiting for both my leaders, and I tell them you should recruit for the same. One is imagination, to really think about something. One is being bold and really not trying to create a cookie cutter of something, but create a trail that's very differentiated and unique and different so that we can be competitive. But then it's also being committed. And committed means seeing it all the way through. You have the ability to get something through. You're not just imagining, you're not just talking, but you have a strategic roadmap that helps you get something done and accomplished to the bottom line. And so if you have that kind of talent you brought in, you can't sit on top of them. You've got to know that these are people bursting. They're trying to achieve what you've asked. But if you sit on them, what happens? One day they pull in the parking lot. They're like, oh, God, they're going to the car. I don't want to go up in here because he's just not going to let me be me. And I have to tussle with him. And he's going to take everything I give him and cross it off. And even when I'm talking to someone and giving them constructive feedback, I always start with what I like first. Like, hey, this is really good. But let's talk about this piece. I think what we can do is X. So then they get this full balance. I don't just start with like, yeah, I don't know about that. You've got to help people be inspired. And I consider myself an inspirational leader, yet running an innovative department. And again, that's knowing myself and who I am. And if that's knowing myself and who I am and how I perceive the world, I also have to manage the talent that I say I want and bring in. A lot of people say, yes, I want this great person, but how do you manage a great person? And how do you manage a person that's at a VP level versus a person that's at a manager level? Those are two different people, right? And they need two different things. A person at the VP level is much more elevated. They're mature. They don't need you sitting on them. A person that's at a manager level does need a little bit more nurturing. They do need you to sit on them. You can't give them that room because guess what? They're probably going to fail because they don't have the maturity to have that kind of space.
Yes. Ooh. I want to inject that into every single leader of every organization. Nonprofit. That was fire.
Well, you know what else, though? I learned about 10 years ago, I read some business journal, and it said that 90% of managers and leaders fail. They're not good. And if you rewind the tape in your life and you think about, Opal, that passionate articulation you just said, that means that we all have experienced more times than not someone that's just not a good leader. Someone's just not a good manager. And it makes sense. And that's because if you're not being authentic to yourself, and as Corey, you and Brad have asked, what's your philosophy? And are you living by it? I just had a debate with, unfortunately, with a distant cousin who was talking about being in their truth. And I thought in my mind, like, are you serious? And it really comes back to what we're talking about, because if you're living your truth, people don't have room to doubt. They have room to respect and understand. And it's a difference. And I hate when somebody uses, and I'm glad you guys have asked a lot about philosophy and can see in my story how the philosophy has continued to mature itself. but you can't just say idle words. And when you're talking about managing team members, they know the difference in today's most popular word, authenticity. They know the difference because it's not just saying it in words, it's living it, and it's also making it actionable. So authenticity also creates action. And if you don't have the balance of both, you're really not exercising, your full truth.